welcome to our November Power Panel. I'm super excited about this one and to introduce our guest that we have today. Today I have Lori here, and she is a licensed clinical social worker and also the owner and founder of Small Steps, Brave Changes. And so today we are going to be talking all about anxiety, which I feel like is just, I know in our world, I don't know how many times I say that word in a day, but it is everywhere. So that is our topic today. So Lori, I don't know if you want to just get started and tell us a little bit about you and then bring us into anxiety.
Sure. So it's actually funny because anxiety is what led me to my career change. So I am actually, it's actually really interesting because you have some people that are just like, okay, I'm going to be a social worker right off the bat. This is actually my second career. So I was in aviation management and like corporate marketing for a long time, and I was really experiencing a lot of anxiety and unfulfillment, and I never really delved into that until I was an adult, and I realized, oh my gosh, what have I been doing my entire life? And then it completely threw me for a loop, and I ended up dedicating my life to making sure other people get resources for anxiety so they can live the life that they want.
Which is like so funny because I cannot picture you as anything else but what you are. Like
I'm really sorry to my previous bosses.
Backstory, Lori and I have worked on many cases together. We have like an awesome professional relationship and all of that. And so like it's really cool, and I'm excited that you're here to chat about all the things. So that's awesome. So all right. So let's start. What is anxiety? What you got for us?
Yes. So, of course, I have to make a joke about metaphors because in therapy we use so many metaphors. I often say we actually took a class in grad school solely about metaphors, but that's not actually the case. But I am going to use a metaphor to explain anxiety. So, anxiety is our body's smoke alarm, if you think about it. Okay. So it's meant to keep us safe, but sometimes it gets too sensitive. So it'll go off super loud with burnt toast at the same time that there's an actual fire. And that's an issue, right? So what we need to do is kind of figure out how to temper that smoke alarm so we're not saying that there's a fire when there isn't, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And I think in talking about, I mean, we're going to talk about kids and parents and caregivers, but I think in talking about kids, our kiddos that we see here for OT, 100% of them have something going on with their sensory and nervous system, which is that smoke alarm, right? And it's like, hey, their smoke alarm is constantly firing. And how do we help regulate that? And what are the anxiety pieces getting pulled in that they're dealing with as soon as they wake up? And, you know, all of those things. So yeah, that's a great way to
and
that.
And sorry, not to over talk.
Yeah.
The other thing I like to plug in is what I call the science of happiness, or happiness chemicals. So that's our dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, endorphins. And so how that kind of works in relation to anxiety is the alarm sort of lives in a brain with threat circuits, right? And those chemicals like serotonin, which manages mood and impulse control, and dopamine, which is our motivation and learning chemical, that those actually shape how anxiety feels to us. Oxytocin, which is our connection chemical, and endorphins, which is our natural like painkiller self-soother, that actually helps turn the alarm down. So if we are feeling like our dopamine or serotonin is not really working and our anxiety is super high, a good rule of thumb is like, how can we naturally help produce oxytocin and endorphins to get that anxiety down? So I kind of like talking about the science behind it because it actually makes it a little bit easier to understand how this system works in our body.
Sure. And so would you say our kiddos that we are working with that have, you know, pretty high anxiety or even chronic anxiety and things like that, like where do we see that be impacted? Or like everybody's got anxiety, right? And I know you and I've talked, like there's a healthy piece to that, right? And so what are the factors that we see with our kids to know that it's unhealthy, right? How do we know when things are too much for them or when it's time to step in and say that smoke alarm's going off way too much?
Right. So that's a great question, right? So if anxiety is frequent, intense, and it's getting in the way of school, sleep, friends, family, life, right? And your kiddo is avoiding, that's usually a big indicator that we need to seek help. And then additional red flags on top of that, right, would be panic attacks, school refusal. If you notice your kiddo is really engaging in like some rituals or compulsions, right? And then on top of that, meltdowns, right? If your kiddo is getting really agitated and even aggressive, that's actually probably an indicator that anxiety is too high. Which is tough because I think a lot of people think, okay, my kid's just acting out and having a tantrum. That's not really what's happening. What's happening is that there's something underneath that's causing that behavior because they don't know how to cope with it. And then some other, red flags, if you notice that your kiddo's like sleep or appetite is changing, that can be an indicator with an anxiety and parent burnout. If you're burnt out managing your kiddo, chances are there's an anxiety factor here that both of you, right, need to seek some extra support with. And that's okay, right?
For sure. No, I love that. I think too, one thing that I feel like when parents say this to me is ooh, yep, there it is when parents kind of make comments like, I know this isn't who they are, or I know that they have other skills. I know that they could be happier. I know that they could be showing themselves in a different light. You know what I mean? And it's like, yes, that's not who your kid is, right?
Mhm.
There's something going on that we can help with. And so I think that's a hard one. And I also think, let's touch on our kiddos that already have a neurodivergent diagnosis, right?
Yeah.
We have kids that come in, just with some anxiety concerns, but they come in with, an ADHD or an autism diagnosis, but underlying for both of those things, I don't know, have you ever seen somebody that's neurodivergent and didn't have some anxiety stuff going on? It's kind of
it is a risk factor. And there's actually a few risk factors that I think parents should know about. And obviously with, or not obvious, neurodivergence and like sensory processing, that's actually like it makes that smoke alarm. If we're going to try, I'm going to try to keep the metaphor all the way through. But I have a tendency to switch halfway. But that smoke alarm is way easier to trigger with the kiddo that's having sensory processing issues or is under that neurodivergent spectrum. So already there's that vulnerability piece there. Which I kind of want to highlight, like, that's not necessarily a bad thing. Like, it's great that our kiddos are so in tune to those things. And that can be a skill if channeled, right? With proper supports. But other things that, and again, with that neurodivergence, that's OCD, ADHD, ASD. But there are also some other biological things that can get in the way. Like if you have any medical issues, like GI issues, sleep issues, POTS symptoms, those are all things that can kind of get you predispositioned for higher anxiety because and then going back to the GI stuff, the same chemicals that are responsible for our mood are the same chemicals used in digestion.
Right. And the way that we have cues of hunger and digestion and eliminating waste is our sensory system, right?
Right.
And it's all part of those body signals and what our nervous system can and can't feel or is hypersensitive to or hyposensitive to, and how much of that is impacted from, again, that body piece and linking it to, all the things that we're talking about. So yeah, that's a big one.
And then other things to put on the radar in terms of like risk factors, right? So environmental changes. So if you guys are going through like a move or a divorce or some type of major transition, right? Or if kiddos having high academic pressure or experiencing, bullying or social issues at school, or if there's a trauma or unpredictable routine, all of that is going to make that smoke alarm more sensitive.
Absolutely.
And then not to knock it, because I don't want parents, don't come for me, parents. I'm trying to help you. Anxious modeling. So if you are a parent who is anxious and we are modeling, this is scary and we are avoiding, right? Or we're doing what I call high accommodation, which I think we can kind of peel that a little bit, right? High accommodation or high stress with low support. Those are things that kids are going to look at and model too. because you are their co-regulator and they're looking to you as an example, that can increase anxiety as well.
Absolutely. And I think, that's such a good thing to put out there. I'm going to take off my OT hat and put my parent hat on for a second. Like, as a parent, like and you're a parent too, like, there's times that you're going to be anxious, right? That's never going to not happen. But talking
Right.
about duration and intensity is a huge part of it.
Yes.
And checking yourself and knowing what we need as parents and what we need as caregivers. And if we don't have that, what does that look like in the environments that we're setting up for our kids? And nobody's perfect, but it affects everybody. And so I think that is a really good reminder. The other thing that when you were talking kind of sparked for me is when you brought up like environments and like trauma, bringing it back to some like neurodivergence, like
Mm-hmm.
our kiddos that have sensory processing disorders or difficulties are literally living in a world every single day that is traumatic, right?
Correct.
And that is like a big like what, to some people, but we live in a neurotypical world and we live in a world that has sounds and smells and sights and lights and all of these things. And if you have a nervous system that is just wired differently, that can be really hard. And so just waking up and stepping out of your home already is going to fire that smoke alarm. And so I think that that's something that's overlooked sometimes because it's not the stuff that we can physically see all of the time.
Right.
Our bodies feel it, and we're all sensory beings, so everybody's got their own sensory pieces. But our kiddos that are more at risk for those sensory processing difficulties definitely have a harder battle sometimes when they're in different environments that they're exposed to all the time, because that's just life,
Yeah.
So
And that could be a whole nother topic,
I
honestly,
know we'll
with
pin it.
masking and
Oh
delayed
yes,
reactions
yes,
and
absolutely,
all of that kind of stuff.
yeah, yeah.
But going back to, again, not to sound corny, I try not to sound so corny in therapy, but kids really do borrow our nervous system.
Absolutely.
So if we having when parents are able to name it, right? You know what, kiddo, the yelling was really hard on me. Mom needs to take a break. But
Absolutely.
mom's going to be right back after she takes like 5 minutes just to breathe a little bit and have some space because I'm overwhelmed a little bit today. Not your fault. It's my nervous system, but I'm going to come back.
Right.
All right. And we'll talk about it. So being able to model that and not over reassure or rescue is a big thing with anxiety because anxiety, if we end up over reassuring or rescuing or trying to make everything okay all the time, which I'm totally guilty of as a parent
Sure.
for sure,
Same.
anxiety, yeah, anxiety can shrink in the short term,
Yeah.
but long term it's going to grow.
Sure.
So that's like a piece that I think has been hard for me as a parent. Is like I don't want my kid to experience any type of pain ever,
Right.
right? But if I go to the rescue and help him avoid all the time, then we are going to have a longer term issue here.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that is a good like transition point into I know one of the other topics we wanted to talk about in regards to right now we're talking about OT and social work and working with our kids, but bringing in parents and caregivers because they are the
Mhm.
co-regulators, right? So we have kiddos that we see, and parents that are watching this right now and caregivers that are watching this, you are working with your kids all the time, and what kind of stress does that bring on to our parents and caregivers, and how can we help, right? So what are some things that, like, from your perspective and the work that you do, because I know you see some of our parents, like, talk to me about how you help parents and caregivers manage either their kiddos, what they've got going on, their own anxiety, their kids anxiety, all that kind of bundle.
Validate, validate, validate. Parenting is not for the faint of heart at
Yes.
all. Um, and I truly believe that you need to take care of you. So I am going to switch the metaphor, of course, which is awful because of course we have 1,000 metaphors, but if we're on a plane, right, you have to have that oxygen mask on first before you can help the person next to you,
Yep.
right? Because if not, you're going to pass out. You're not going to be able to make it through. You're not going to be able to be the co-regulator that you need to be if you are not managing your own vulnerabilities and taking care of yourself.
Absolutely.
At least not long term.
Yep. Yep. For sure. And I think then, to talk a little bit about that, like, because we have partnered on so many cases, first I want to say, like, let's talk about what it has looked like when OT and social work match up, right? So,
Yeah.
um, Kid Power and Small Steps, Brave Changes works together. We love working together, and we've had cases where we see kids together, right, in a co-treatment, where a kiddo might be with both of us if we're both able to be in person, or maybe
Mhm.
one of the disciplines is virtual and the other
Mhm.
person has the kiddo in person. That has been beautiful, and I don't know if you want to speak to that, because we both have together been on cases like that, and I know it's been magic. So what are your thoughts on like that setup?
Um, Again, body first, brain second, right? I have had in the past, right, families come and say, hey, I want to get my 7-year-old into therapy. And that's great. Some kiddos, right, they're like, yeah, maybe they're at the point maybe where they can go into a little bit of talk therapy and make some of those links.
Yep.
But if you have a kiddo that doesn't even have the language for that and is so sensory overloaded physically, we need to get the body taken care of first for us to be able to even make the links for coaching and thought choices, like thoughts and different choices based on that. There's no way, right? So I think partnering with OT and even starting with OT first until we have some of those physical coping skills in place to help manage our body's responses, that is first step. And then in terms of co-treating, I love it because having someone that is OT helping managing kiddo with those physical sensations and being able to like do some of those, I would say that body focused first actually allows me to even be able to ask certain questions to make those links for kiddo. Right. So it's, for me, it actually makes my job easier. And I feel like it creates a better therapy opportunity for kiddo to engage.
I mean, for all involved, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
It has been
So I,
such magic when we get to work together.
yeah,
But it is really cool to see both disciplines poof and create.
right. And I've had, like I have had families ask like, oh my gosh, but like you going into virtual with OT, number one, we don't do it an hour the whole entire time. If I am doing virtual with the kiddo and I'm, co-treating with OT, normally they start with OT on their own, to kind of help level them and kind of guide them into transition to talk, which again, if we're talking about kiddos with tough transitions and anxiety, like having that space, it allows me then to come in and do my work in tandem with you guys, where then we can talk more through emotions and what activities can link to that emotion to start putting the building blocks in place so we can have those conversations in future.
And I think
Yeah.
even when we have kiddos that maybe because of logistics or because of whatever, we don't have the opportunity to co-treat, still having the ability of knowing, okay, kiddos coming to OT and kiddos going to social work, we have the awesome advantage of being a collaborate outside of that and knowing what the other discipline is doing and being able to build off of that has been like a game changer for all of our shared clients. I mean, truly, I don't think we've had any that was like, oh yeah, no, that didn't really work. It has been such a great thing. So then I just want to kind of like finish this conversation up to say, this is our way to share that, yes, we have a partnership. And I think, we have a lot of kids that we go back and forth to making sure that they're getting both services, but we are really trying to also make it known that we have this resource for parents.
Yeah.
What that can look like, right? So, Lori, I know you and I have talked about, like, let's say a kiddo's coming in for OT and parents are really seeking out their own therapy, either for parent coaching or their own therapeutic needs or whatever it may be. What does that look like? We could have them see you or one of your clinicians virtually while their kid's in OT, right? And what that could look like. Go ahead.
And again, it doesn't have to be, because I think somebody asked me, it probably was a parent, like, oh my gosh, but if I take my session for myself, does that mean I'm not going to be able to check in with my kiddo during OT, right? And no, like we want to make this easy and doable for you. So there's actually some adults that I will see for 45 minutes or even half an hour. So that way they have that individual time to decompress and potentially learn a coping skill if they need it to help manage the upcoming week. But then they have enough space to go back to work if they're at lunch,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Or go back and meet with kiddos, you know, um, therapists and get the updates that they need so that they can continue to maintain engagement with their kiddos' treatment.
Yep.
So this doesn't have to be an all or nothing or either or, which I think a lot of adults kind of get into their head of like, no, I have so many doctor's appointments going on. I can't do one more. I can't do one more for myself. It's just too much.
Yep.
Fair. So how can we make that more accessible so that way you can get the care that you need without it being at your own expense? Because again, back to that that aviation analogy, if we're not putting the oxygen mask on you,
Yeah.
you are going to burn out.
Yeah.
You are not going to be able to help the person next to you. You're not going to be able to help your kiddo long term.
Yep. And you've said this too, that like parenting is hard, but
Mm-hmm.
parenting a kiddo that has stuff going on is really
Oh
hard.
yeah.
And
Mm-hmm.
I just think like being able to just know that you have, even if it's a half hour cut out to talk and share your, what's going on, get some guidance, or just have a space to just let it out
Yeah.
is so helpful because, you've seen it. And I know all of these parents and caregivers are running kids from this appointment to that appointment to this thing to that thing. And they don't ever get that space to just let it out. And there's so much healing that I think can happen from that, and being able to just have that time uninterrupted for them to just have that space.
And I'm sure you've heard the parents say, I feel like I'm running around to doctor appointment, to therapy appointment, a therapy appointment all the time.
Yep. Yep.
And that doesn't help the process either,
No.
right? We want this to be something that you're seeking a benefit for as a parent and that you're not burnt out with that process, right? We want to make this easier and more attainable.
Yeah. No. I love that. And so I'm so excited. I mean, we've been partners for a while, so this isn't a new thing, but I'm excited that we can get more of this information out. I hope this was helpful to any parents, caregivers, professionals that um, are viewing this. Lori and I could talk for days, truly. And so I can't wait till we have another one that we can bring up another great topic to chat more about. I'm going to do a nice little plug here too, to just share that, the conversations that Lori's having and the things that she's talking about body first and brain and all of that is not how every therapist works. And that is one of the top reasons why, Small Steps, Brave Changes is our number one, referral to, because it works and because they understand what we understand what they do. And it's not just talk, talk, talk. Okay, this works, it doesn't work. It is truly something that is not in every place. And so like, I'm so grateful that we have you. And, I just want to share that because I feel like people don't always like to talk about themselves, but I'm happy to plug that you are not like any other therapist. Your team is not like any other therapist, and that is why we choose to work together. So yeah, so thank you for being on here with us. I can't wait to have you on again. And anybody that has any questions, please, you can reach out to me, or you can check out Small Steps, Brave Changes on their website. They have a direct link from our website, so very easy to get you guys in contact with. So thank you so much, and we'll talk again soon.
Thank you. And likewise. All right.